There was a man who was severely disabled. Now, we don't know why. Had he had an accident? Did he have MS, ALS, cerebral palsy, stroke? We don't know. But the fact was, he couldn't get anywhere. He was stuck. He was paralyzed. So it doesn't look like he had a lot, but what he did have had 4 crazy friends. 4 friends who paid a lot of attention to him and cared deeply for him, so much so that to get him help, they went to some incredible extremes, even vandalism, to get help for the guy. Now, the story implies, and you can read the story in Mark chapter 2, the story implies that it was actually the men who had the idea to get help for their friend. That's what the story implies. And so they pack him up and they haul him off to see Jesus, who they had heard was doing some pretty incredible things, and people are getting well and getting healed. And so they approach the house and they're carrying him. They approach the house. They can't even get near the house. I mean, there's so many people. Jesus is inside. It's packed outside, it's packed inside. There's no way to get to them, but they had a crazy idea, and they haul him up to the roof of the house, and this is where they commit vandalism. They tear the roof apart so that they could lower him down so that he can be confronted by Jesus. And of course, the story is powerful in that Jesus heals him. And it's remarkable. That's probably the big idea of the story, of course, is the power and the miraculous power of Jesus. But the subtext of the story is the one that's got my attention too, and that is these 4 friends. It's an incredible story. Their foresight for him, their loyalty to him, their doggedness for him, their perseverance for him. So I think the story has 2 big ideas. Of course, the first big idea is the miraculous power of Jesus. The second big idea grabs me when I look at this story is this: you can't endure on your own. You cannot endure on your own. Now, the reason why is this journey from suffering to endurance to hope is just too long, and it's too hard, and it's just too complicated for you to decide you're going to lone wolf it, or you're going to white knuckle your way through your suffering. Yeah, it's true that we can rejoice when we run into problems, for we know that they'll help us develop endurance, and endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. That's all true. We've looked at that passage the last couple of weeks. But you know what? That's a long haul from struggle to endurance. Like when you can't make it stop hurting, or when you're crippled with fear, or when you cry all day, or you're just ridiculously disillusioned, or maybe when you hate yourself. Look, just getting out of bed is a tall order, let alone bucking up with hypomone. Endurance. You need help. You can't endure on your own. So far in this series, Amy and Barry have helped us pay attention to this idea of endurance. We've thought deeply about it. First week, Amy encouraged us to practice a new level of discipline. I agree with her. See this journey, this long journey from suffering to endurance as a marathon, and that requires us to train ourselves. She said this: we build our endurance by sticking to our disciplines. We spend time with God. We practice silence and solitude and prayer. She was calling us to a form of spiritual grit. I agree with her. Now, Barry insisted that what we need in addition to that is we need to have a mindset shift, that we need to look at our sufferings with a new paradigm. He said this: needing to endure can be proof that you're sharing in the mission of Christ. Following Christ means facing pushback from the powers of this broken world. Enduring that pushback is a proof that we're on the right track. That's a mindset shift when we look at our suffering. And through both of those first 2 weeks of this series, both Amy and Barry reminded us, in addition to what they were talking about, to fall back on the mysterious intervention of God into our struggle. I love the word, the providence of God. That's what it means. God's providential engagement where when we're at our worst, He is present. So can we just take a moment and just reflect on the providential care of God in the middle of your suffering? I'm going to read a handful of passages of Scripture, and I'm going to do it slowly. And what I'd like you to do is just relax for a second, take a deep breath in and let it out, and listen to these truths about the providential care of God. Listen. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. When you pass through the waters, I'll be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Sometimes you just have to take in the promises of God and think about them, think deeply about them, because they're powerful and they're wonderful. And yes, God's providence carries us from suffering to endurance. Yes, as do spiritual disciplines, as does grit, as does a paradigm shift in our thinking. It all carries us in this journey from suffering to endurance. But sometimes, even with all that, endurance is hard to come by. Sometimes we need more than that. Sometimes we need each other. You can't endure on your own. Can you say this with me? Say, I can't endure on my own. Say that. Ready? Here we go. Just one more time. Can you say it out loud? Do you believe that? I think you do. Maybe it's hard to admit because we need to get it all together, right? I can't endure life on my own. I can't. I'll tell you that right now. I don't think you can either. Like the theme that runs through the story of God, of God's providential engagement. That's a theme you can see from Genesis to Revelation. That God is present in our tragedies and pain. There's another theme that runs through the Bible as well. And it is the power of a caring, loving human being. Somebody who bears witness. Somebody who offers arms of support. Somebody with a listening ear. Somebody who helps carry the load. As I did before, I'm going to read you some scriptures about this theme through the Bible. And again, just relax and listen to the power of a human being. Let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some in their habit of doing, but encouraging one another. Encourage one another. Build each other up. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak and maybe the ultimate. Greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. Now, you know this, right? You know all this, of course. Community, committed relationships, we all know it's essential to our well-being and endurance. We need each other. All right, I get it. We need each other. Then tell me why 1 out of every 2 Americans will tell you they have no regular in-person social interactions at all. 1 out of 2 Americans have nobody. 47% of Americans would tell you that the relationships they do have are not meaningful. 57% of Americans eat all their meals alone. 36% of Americans report serious loneliness, which means feeling lonely frequently or almost all of the time. It's bad. Maybe worse than ever. In 2023, the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, declared that we're in the middle of an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. Maybe this is why endurance is so hard in the 21st century. Several years ago, I ran into a young man who I knew had a very robust, at least at that time, had a robust social network. He was known to hang out with a group of guys who spent time together and enjoyed being together. And so I asked him when I ran into him, "Hey, do you guys still get together?" He said, "Well," he said, during COVID, like a lot of us, we stopped hanging out with each other because we kind of had to. And then when the coast was clear, so to speak, we tried to reconnect again. It didn't work. And you know what? He said, "I think we just gave up trying." Now, I'm guessing that that's true for you, or for many of us. How many of us have given up trying to maintain important relationships? For instance, don't raise your hand, but how many of you used to be in a small group and you are no longer? How many of you have become way more committed to holding up at home than meeting others for coffee like you used to? Maybe I'm being cranky. Maybe I'm being a little extreme here, but I think in general, we have decided that investing in relationships isn't worth it anymore. The journey from suffering to endurance is now longer and harder because we've given up trying to cultivate and maintain relationships. So this is the point in the sermon where we shift from exposing the problem to talking about solutions. All right? Now I'm guessing that you're with me at this point. I can't imagine anybody disagree with me and say, "Oh no, the state of relationships, we're in good shape." No, we're not. And some of you may be thinking through, okay, I'm with you. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start emphasizing relationships more. I think I'm going to get the old gang together for dinner. I think I'm going to text my brother. I haven't texted him in a while. So probably what you're all thinking about are some vague New Year's type resolutions that are not bad, but they are not specific enough and not measurable enough to address your need for endurance. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to suggest 2 very specific ideas. I think they're life-changing decisions. And I think it's so important that I'm going to almost guarantee that if you do these two things, it will provide for you relationships that will help you endure. I'm going to go out on a limb and say these two steps will help you refire a commitment to caring for one another, and you will see your endurance increase. Is that a big enough setup for what I'm going to tell you? You ready for this? Here we go. Find a mentor. That's step number one. Find a mentor. Now, the word mentor, I was impressed to be able to tell my son I knew this because, he's pulling from he's all into the ancient things. And so I discovered where the word mentor comes from. It comes from the epic Greek poem, 800 BC, the Odyssey. Because in the poem, Odysseus, who's the king of Ithaca, has to go off to war, and he's very concerned about his son, Telemachus. Who's going to care for my son? I'm going to make sure he gets an education and needs to be developed while I'm off to war. So he approaches an old friend and says to the old friend, would you teach my son, advise my son, would you take care of him while I'm gone? Guess what his old friend was named? Mentor. Mentor, that's where the name comes from. Mentor, a respected and trusted friend and advisor. Now, some of you might react again like, oh, I got one of those. Someone every now and then I talk to my uncle. He's kind of a mentor to me. I have a couple of friends, we grab lunch from time. By the way, side note about grabbing lunch. Do you know what we're implying when we say, let's grab lunch? Let's find something we can do quick enough so we can get back to our life. We don't enjoy relationships. We grab lunch. That's part of our problem. So maybe that's what you're thinking. I'm going to grab lunch with somebody. I'll call my uncle. I've got a mentor. I don't think you have the kind of mentor like the kind I'm suggesting that you find. Mentor, in my mind, here's a deeper definition. A mentor is a respected and trusted friend and advisor with whom you meet consistently for a long period of time. Because if you are going to, watch this, if you are going to endure, you need to have relational repetitions. Relational repetitions, month after month, year after year with a particular person, if you are going to mimic the long haul it is from suffering to endurance. A person who month after month, year after year, sees you at your best and your worst, they're naturally, when I say they're naturally there in tragedy and triumph, because you're going to see each other in a month. So if you've gone through tragedy or you've gone through triumph, you guarantee you're going to see them in a month, and you guarantee you're going to talk about it. Meeting monthly with a person for a long, long time is not an appointment. It's not a get-together. It's a journey. As is the path from suffering to endurance. I had one of those for 35 years. His name was Charlie. I've talked about him numerous times when I've preached here, and I've written recently in a blog, and I've actually wrote recently because Charlie died 3 months ago. So after 35 years of meeting with this guy, I have reflected long and hard about the power of mentorship. I've told his story, like I said, many times. When he first approached me 35 or so years ago, and he said, "Do you want to get together for coffee?" I was like, no. I didn't say this, but I was thinking, no, because I didn't like him. I didn't. He intimidated me. Now, I was 35 years old, which tells you how old I am now. But I was 35 years old, and this guy was the man. He was the man. I think Tim would say that, the man. He was the man in the church. He was everyone, he just was a dominant personality. And I'm like, why does he want to have coffee with him? Am I going to get yelled at? Am I in trouble? So we met with him. I made it through that meeting. I was like, oh, thank you. Well, then he calls me again. Seriously? 35 years later, I think on an average year of the last 35 years, we maybe missed meeting once a month, maybe a couple of times a year. So I think I met monthly with Charlie for over 300 and somewhere over 300 times of the last 35 years. I will miss him. So what did we do? What made this so important? We sat down, we had something to eat, we talked, we prayed, we left. But it was what happened month after month. It was so boring and normal that I knew when we went to the bagel place, he was going to get a blueberry bagel with nothing on it, dry, and a cup of black coffee. And he did that how many? Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Then we shifted to another place, and I knew it was going to be a cinnamon scone. And near the end, he was just getting hot water because he couldn't have caffeine anymore. And every time we get together, and not only that, we'd have the same thing. We'd sit at the same table in the same chairs at the same restaurant. There was consistency to it, and that was what was brilliant about it. Now, he was amazing in that when we got together in March, he would remind me what we talked about in April. He would ask me, hey, you told me you were going to do that, this or that. How's it going? Tell me what's going on with your daughter or with your son or whatever. It was consistently asking me questions and remembering. And then every now and then he would surprise me. One day I was telling him about something that was very hard for me, and I looked up and tears were coming down his face. Who does that? Who cries over you? Every now and then he would have something to remind me of. Let me just say, he was gentle about it, never was harsh. He was an amazing mentor. See, with a mentor like that, you don't have to do anything but meet consistently. And when you do, you listen to one another and respond based on what you needed. That's all it was. It's the repetition of that process that builds endurance. Now, thankfully, I still have co-mentor friends. Charlie was he was the classic mentor in that he was one generation older than me, and I know you're looking at me thinking, well, dude, you're old. How old was Charlie? He was 85 years old, I think, when he died. I have co-mentor friends that I still meet with monthly. Bruce and Mark, I don't know if Bruce is here. I know Mike is here. And Mark was here the first hour. There are three men that are roughly my age that we meet. Mike and I meet twice a month, and Bruce and Mark and I meet once a month. I value these relations. They're dear relationships to me. So, let's talk about you. Here's what I would suggest, because right now you're thinking, where can I find somebody like that? They're already in your life. You don't have to go looking for it. They're already in your life. What you're going to do, watch this, is you're going to upgrade an existing relationship. You're going to find somebody who'll be willing to commit to meeting you once a month. And if they go, well, I don't know what we're going to do, just meet. And just watch what happens, and you'll build endurance. Upgrade that relationship. Find somebody and you're going to have to ask them. You're going to have to ask them. And then begin to meet. My recommendation for you is you find one mentor to meet once a month for 1 year. Now, if you can pull that off, find a mentor to meet once a month for 1 year, it's going to go longer than a year. And look forward. What would it be like for you to have 20 years from now, 25 years from now, meeting with the same? Does that sound appealing to you? You can't endure on your own. Did you catch what I'm trying to say? You can't endure on your own. That's all I'm trying to say. Now, I told you I had a second practice. This is so ridiculously specific. First one is find a mentor. You ready for the second one? Be a mentor. Or become a mentor. Start to see yourself as one of those crazy friends who you carry your friend to Jesus. I'm going to recommend a book to you that I found very inspiring and helpful, written by David Brooks. It's called How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. Now, the reason why I'm going to tell you about this book is because in there, he talks about the kind of person that are really good mentors. He calls them illuminators. So if you're going to become a mentor to someone, I'm just going to give you some of the descriptions that Brooks gives about how you become an illuminator or a good mentor of someone who's younger than you in particular. First of all, if you're going to be a good mentor, you need to practice unusual curiosity. You need to listen with a different quality of attention. The best mentors are those who listen, and you know they're listening to you, they're paying attention. As a matter of fact, how many times have you gotten together with someone and you've asked them, you start the conversation with, "How you doing?" They tell you. Maybe this is the first time you've met them. "So tell me about yourself." They tell you about yourself. Nothing. So they tell you, and then you say, "Well, tell you more," and they tell you more, and you're sitting there, and all the time you're going, "I wish you would ask me a question about me." You can't be a good mentor if you're talking about yourself, full stop. You can only be a good mentor to someone is if you're asking the questions. And pay attention. Put the phone away. Lean into that. You can tell when somebody's paying attention. They're leaning in. Practice unusual levels of curiosity. I love this quote by E.M. Forster. Brooks has it in his book. He said, "To speak to," and I added this, "a good mentor is like an inverse charisma, a sense of being listened to with such intensity that you have to become your most honest, sharpest, and best self." When I was with Charlie, I felt, and he didn't force me this, I felt this internal pressure to be the best person I could be just because he paid attention to me at the level he paid it. Does that make sense what I'm saying? He paid attention to me that I felt like I had to rise to the occasion. That's what a good mentor does. And that's how you build endurance. It's a crazy amount of development that can happen just when somebody asks you good questions. Second thing, you're going to practice unusual curiosity. You need to respect them too. And here's simply what it means. If you're going to mentor someone, don't go into it thinking you're going to fix them. Brooks says this, "Above almost any other need, human beings long to have another person look into their face with loving respect and acceptance." Look, people are not a puzzle that needs to be solved. They are a mystery that you can never get to the bottom of. Third, see yourself, if you're going to be a good mentor, be an accompanist. To be an accompanist, my whole life being married to my wife, I know what an accompanist is because that's what she's been. Listen, you can watch her play the piano, accompanying somebody else. Accompaniment is a humble way of helping someone else on their journey. As they go, as the person you're mentoring is going about making their own music, be an accompanist to them. Honor that person's ability to make choices and meet them where they are. Help them chart their course. That's what a good mentor does. And finally, if you're going to be a good mentor, you just need to show up. This needs to be when you're mentoring someone, when you come to the next month, at the top of your list is your meeting with that person. You are not going to mentor someone if you get around to it, "Oh, we haven't met in a while." Or I'm going to reach out to, I'm going to see if we can set up. No, you know you're going to meet with them because you did the month before. That's a good mentor. Consider time with others high on your priority list, not a luxury, not adjunct to your life. Showing up when someone is grieving, has been laid off, has been suffered some sort of humiliation or setback, when someone is going through a hard time, look, just show up. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say a thing. Just bear witness. Just be there with them with a heightened awareness of what they're experiencing at the moment. If you need words, they'll come to you. I know you're freaking out. Some of you are freaking out. You're thinking, what am I going to say? I can't hang out with a person who's struggling. I don't handle my own things. Oh, wait till you see how you can handle your own things when you ask questions of other people who are trying to work through their stuff. It changes you too. Be a good mentor. Who's that going to be? Who's one generation younger than you? Just imagine if you approach someone who's already in your life, one generation younger to you, and say, "You want to get together for coffee?" And they do. And then you say, "Can we get together again next month?" And they go, "What?" "Yeah, I was thinking maybe could we meet every month for a year?" It'll be like Christmas. It'll be relational Christmas to them. Who will it be? You will change someone's life if you invite them into yours. Now, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to have a last word in a second, but I'm not going to walk away without having you do something. So if you want to just go to your rooms and think about it in your head, that's fine. Or you want to get out your phone to the notes section. I want you to write some names down that you're thinking about. Who are you going to approach to be a mentor? Who are you going to mentor? Get a piece of paper, write this down. I'm not kidding. Who are you going to reach out to? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to write a few names down. Then I'm going to have a last word and a prayer. So, find a mentor, be a mentor, because you can't endure on your own. Let's pray. Yeah, the thought just crossed my mind, Father, that you've given us unbelievable pool of people around us who all could potentially be mentors or someone we could mentor. You've just blessed us with the possibility of these incredible relationships. So thank you. I just say thank you. And you constructed your kingdom in such a way that it depends on us relating to each other. So thanks for all that. But now, help us have the courage to take the next step and approach some of the names that we've just listed. And please give us the wonder and the joy of having somebody say yes and begin a long journey of mentorship that will help us to endure. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks for watching, but don't stop there. We want you to find community at Grace Church, and the first step in doing that is going to gracechurch.us/hub. There you'll find other sermons, details about upcoming events, and other important announcements. And make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out when we post something new. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.